Our first reading comes from Ecclesiastes 7, 1 to 14. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of the death is better than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fools. This is also vanity. Surely oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the hearts of fools. Say not, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask these. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money. And the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. Consider the work of God, who can make straight what he has made crooked. In the day of prosperity be joyful, and in the day of adversity consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him.
You guys should get ready. Get ready. It's Super Bowl Sunday. This is a pretty exciting day. It's a pretty exciting day. It's the end of the football season, which I guess I don't care too much about football anymore, but used to care a lot about it. But for those of you Seahawks fans, I'm sure this is a real big day for you. But Solomon, in this passage that we're talking about today, he is talking about the end being more important than the beginning of things. And I think we understand that, right? We understand that how you finish something is more important than how you begin something. It's not necessarily that it is better in the sense of like ethically it is better or it tastes better all the time, but it is more important. It's more weighty. And that's really what we're talking about today for us. I see a good amount of gray and silver hair, okay? And usually that means that you are over the hill, you are closer to the day of death than you are the day of birth. And that means that you should really be thinking about how you're going to end this life, how your end is going to be, much more than you're thinking about how life was. And Solomon's going to bring that up. I've been thinking about that a little bit this week, and the thought that came to mind is the show Lost. Who watched this show when it was on? Okay, religiously watched it. Yeah, big time for me. Well, except for I actually watched it I binged it basically because I didn't have TV during the time span that this was mainly on, and so. But I remember Lost was, it was I think the second biggest TV show in the country. It was massive. I think the in season 2 at least when it was going on, it was like 19 million people were watching it a week, which is just insane. An insane amount of people watching a TV show. And it was like the water cooler conversation point in the country. What's going on the island? What's going to happen next week? And it was just this incredible cultural landmark, great characters, great intriguing story. And then who knows what happened at the end of the series? Did they stick the landing or did they fall flat? I don't know. Okay, well, I'll let you know. Most people thought it fell flat. Most people thought that the series was wonderful, and then at the end of it, they just failed everything. And I don't think they actually did, but that was the public perception, is that the ending was just awful, and it ruined everything. How you end something is often more important than how you begin it. Thinking back, speaking of the Super Bowl, I can't remember what Super Bowl this was, but it's the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. It's, one of the greatest comebacks in any just NFL game history. The end of the third quarter, New England and the devil, Tom Brady, they are down 3-28, and by the end of the game, they have clawed their ways back and have won the victory at the end. Are you ready for this? You ready for this? There was a Super Bowl a while back involving the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks. And the Seahawks had it in hand. They started wonderfully. They get to the very end of the game and they make a questionable decision. And how you end is more important than how you begin. Not that this is a prophecy at all of what might happen today, but just be worried, Seattle fans. Be worried. Don't be reading the press too much, okay? How you end is more important than how you begin. I was thinking about that in regards to our lives, though, much more important than a football game. There's two prolific Christian they weren't pastors, but they were writers, evangelists. Ravi Zacharias, you probably heard about him back in 2020. He fell from grace after he died. It turns out that he had affairs with many women and spiritually abused them. And this guy, prior to his death, he was known as one of the most ethically robust people, incredibly moral men in the public eye. Well known, well beloved. If anyone would have committed this, would not have committed a sin like this, you would expect that Ravi Zacharias would be one of those. He was a knight in shining armor, and yet it turns out he was a wolf to many women. Philip Yancey, just this year, again, another guy who wrote extensively on having godly character and not falling into the trap of celebrity pastoral worship. He was a preacher of the theology of the cross. He's a guy who, anyone, you look at him and you'd say, this is not going to be an adulterer. I'm not saying that just like because of the Bilbo Baggins hairstyle. I'm saying like he was a guy who had incredible character by all rights in most areas of his life. People looked at him, they respected him. He just came up with this memoir that was beautiful, beautiful. And then just a few weeks ago, he admits to having an affair. And he has Parkinson's, but this affair has gone on for like 8 years. And his wife is now left to care for him as he approaches the end of his days, and she's been lied to and betrayed all this time. How you end your life is more important than how you start it. And Solomon reminds us of that in our text today. He says, a good name is better than precious ointment. It's just another way to say your character, your true character, and how you are remembered by people is much more important than your wealth and the resources you have. Your name is more important than the oil that you made, okay? That is what you should be focusing on much more. Solomon's reminding us today that we are eventually going to the house of mourning. We are eventually going to have a funeral, and all the people around us are going to know who we were. And maybe they won't know everything. I don't think like Ravi and I don't think Philip, I don't think they were really expecting that people were going to find out how monstrous they were in different ways. I think they were hoping to get away with it. But people knew. And they knew the evil that lurked in them, and now it's out. And everything that they did is now thrown into disreputation. Their legacy is thrown in the mud. And so for you and I today, we have to be concerned with that end is coming. How do I want to be remembered? How do I want my character to go down? And not for the sake of just having people sing our praises, but for you to be able to go to your grave and know, I did what God called me to do. I was the person that God called me to be. Keep the end in mind. Solomon, he tells us, it is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living, boy, they sure would do well to lay it to heart. He says, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. Now, if you read that, and you are a student of world religions, you know that sure sounds like Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha. Who knows if this actually happened, but like the myth goes that Prince Gautama, he saw four things that fundamentally shaped his life. He is a prince, he is wealthy, he has fame, and he goes and he goes out in the carriage outside the palace, and he sees an old man, and he says, oh, I'm going to be like that old man one day. And then he sees a sick person, someone who is just facing the weakness of this world inflicted upon him, and he sees, that's going to be me one day. There's intense suffering in this world. And then he sees a funeral procession go by. He sees a corpse, and he remembers, I'm going to be that corpse one day. And he thinks, what on earth can I do to prepare for that in the face of this intense suffering that this world has? And he sees a fourth person. He sees an ascetic, someone who kind of renounces the pleasures of life, renounces the desires of life, kind of not checks out, but essentially says, this life isn't going to give me what I want, so I need to be secure in myself. And he says, maybe that's what I'm going to be. And he pursues that to the nth degree, and he, achieves enlightenment, and he says, this is a better way of life, okay? That's the Buddha. That's the story. And it sounds, a decent bit like Solomon here in this passage, except Solomon doesn't say, renounce the pleasures of life, renounce desires of life. Just try to not feel these feelings that you're feeling right now. Instead, what he says is, look at them closely. Feel them. Look at that corpse. Look at that old man. Look at that person who's wasting away in the hospital bed and feel it, because that's going to be you. And if you think that this life is just going to keep on going all roses, it's not. Feel that. Invest in a morgue rather than a bouncy house, and spend time there, because you're going to be like that. You need to remember that and feel that, but don't just feel it. Let it change you. Don't just listen to the songs of fools about how wonderful you are and how much you have meant to them. Listen to the wise who come and they correct you. Listen to that. Let it change you and become someone that you would be proud of. That's Solomon's message here, at least in part of this passage. Look at the pain of this world and let it change you. There's a friend of mine. She's really well acquainted with death and grief. She's kind of, I don't want to say she's infatuated with it, but she's been a safe place for people as they suffer. And people, as they're approaching the end of their lives, they just really trust her, okay? And she was telling me a story of when her father died. And her father was a well-respected doctor in the community, and he was, just people praised him at his funeral. And she heard this over and over and over again. Your father, wonderful man, wonderful man, wonderful man. And eventually she stood up and she said, he cheated on my mother over and over and over again. And he was abusive to people. And none of y'all are talking about that. And I wonder what he would have thought if he could hear what his daughter said about him that day. If he knew that that is what would have happened. If he would have lived his life the way that he did. The reality of it is that people know who we are. They may be more polite than we deserve. But the reality is that people do know it. And you're not going to be able to fool people forever. You're especially not going to be able to fool God. And I'm sure that man, if he would have known what his daughter was going to say about him, and if he would have been able to consider for himself more deeply, he would have taken the advice that Solomon has to give here, and that he would live a wise life. Solomon, he says, wisdom is, here's a bit of a translation here. This could be translated, wisdom is good with an inheritance, or you could say, wisdom is as good as having an inheritance. Let's fix the context a little bit better. It is an advantage to those who see the sun, who are living under the sun here. The protection of wisdom, the shade that wisdom gives you, the protection, is like this. It's the same thing as the protection that money gives you. It preserves your life, but only more so. You being able to see how your end will be is able to shape how you live this life. And it's a basic statement that Solomon is telling us here. And yet, it is so often difficult in the moment to live by it. Solomon tells us, sorrow is better than laughter. For sadness of face makes the heart glad. And yet, as we approach this life, we don't want to feel sad. We don't want to feel sad, and so we run away from it. We run away from the pain of looking at death, of looking at suffering in this world, and knowing that suffering would make us wise so we could live our lives better. We don't want to see it, and so we turn away from it into happiness all the time. And I see this, I mentioned this to many of you before. I think there's a great travesty in society right now how we are hiding our cemeteries from public view, and how we're not having funerals. I mean, and not just the whole, well, there's a memorial service or a funeral, but no, we're going to call it a celebration of life. That's a whole nother issue. It's a pet peeve of mine, just so you know. But the issue of not even having funerals at all. So many people are dying, and then there is just nothing afterwards. And the thought is that if we just kind of brush this grief away, if we brush this sadness away, we're going to be fine. But what Solomon says is sorrow of face, sadness of face, a sour face will cleanse the heart. It will scour the heart. It will cleanse the evil that is in you. Said if you expose yourself to suffering, it's going to give you wisdom in this life. But we don't want that. We don't want to live in that. Instead, we want to just keep the party going. Explain, oh, well, the Christian doesn't suffer, doesn't sorrow. The Christian doesn't mourn. We don't mourn the way the rest of the world mourns, but we do mourn. We have to feel this. But we run away from it. Another way we run away from keeping the end of our life in mind is we have these projects of pride where we don't want to really consider deeply who we are in this world, and so we insulate ourselves from criticism. Solomon says it is better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of the fools. There's a little bit of a pun going on here in Hebrew in these words here for the thorns under the pot. You could say there's nettles under the kettles, as one translator has it. And if you cook with wood, you know the difference between having leaves and twigs and whatnot under the pot, fast source of fuel that burns up real fast and makes everything all smoky inside and full of wood dust and all that, versus a good solid robust log that's gone down to coals. You know the difference. One is a slow fuel source, one is a fast one. One takes a while and there's some suffering involved. You got to let the coals get to be coals. One is fast and it heats something up fast, but you end up with charcoal in your mouth afterwards. That's the difference between the correction of the wise that hurts at the time and the songs of fools who say you're wonderful, who don't point out any of your flaws. You just say, I am so blessed to know you in my life. And meanwhile, you know all the pains that you have caused them and all the ways that you have not lived up to what you were supposed to be. But we insulate ourselves from it. It's a concern when I think we could point to this in any corporation. Could point to this in any politician who accepts the praise of others, almost the sycophantic praise of other people, saying, "Oh, wow, we would never be able to do this without you, sir. We would never be able to do this without you, ma'am. You are amazing and you have no flaws at all." People who say that to another person, and that person just accepts it wholeheartedly. There's a problem there. There's a problem when someone just accepts the praise of fools and actually seeks that out by surrounding themselves with fools, and someone who surrounds themselves with wise people of character, people that are going to tell them where they are wrong. Solomon tells you, don't put up with poppy songs of fools. Listen to that painful correction from a mentor. Third way that Solomon points out how we kind of run away from considering the end, from laying our ends upon our hearts, is kind of this sin, if you could call it that, but definitely a big error of nostalgia. Someone who is constantly saying, boy, why is it that back in the day it was just so much better? We were able to do this, and today it's just all bad. Solomon says, don't ask that question. Don't ask that question of, why were the former days better than the days that are today? Why ask that question? It's not from wisdom. He says, consider the work of God. Who can make straight what he has made crooked? Are you able to chart the course of life? No, God can. Why are you telling him that he's got things wrong? Instead, in the day of prosperity, in the day of good, live in that good. Be joyful in the day of joy. And in the day of adversity, consider God has made that day just as he has made this day. And the reason why is so that you and I may not be able to find anything that is about to come. So we can't predict the future. so that we can't live in this state of, boy, I can live my life forever and know that if I do this, if I put in this input, I'm going to get this output. Solomon is telling you God does not want you to be able to live like that. He wants you to live in a way that relies on him completely, for the good and for the bad, and to carry you through it. But we get so focused on we can at least, get so focused on looking back at what has been that we don't even see where we're going. And we live this life unwise, not ready to meet our end. And I would tell you, church, that those three enemies, those three things of pursuits of pleasure, prideful pursuits, and a nostalgic love of the past, those three things are unavoidable for us. We love pleasure too much to not fall into that trap. We love our sense of self. Our pride is just too much. Our past is just too much. We love them so much, and it's unavoidable to not fall into that trap. So what do? What's the way out of that hole that we fall into? I think the best answer to that is that you need to know a different story. You need to fall in love with a different story, one that actually makes sense of this world better, that isn't just a sad story. I think where Gautama, where the Buddha got things wrong, is he thought, boy, I just have to reject this world. I have to reject the desires that I have because there's no way that there's going to be something better after this life. But we have an answer there. We have an answer that Jesus Christ came for us, that he gave us a better story. I paired this passage with Matthew 5 for a reason. They sound a lot alike, don't they? In Matthew 5, 1 through 12, Jesus is on the mount and he is telling all these just very seemingly controversial statements. He says, blessed, or another way to translate it would just be to say happy. It's different than happy, but happy are the poor in spirit. Happy are those who mourn. Happy are those who are meek. Happy are the hungry and thirsty for righteousness. Happy are the ones who are merciful. Happy are the ones who are pure in heart. Happy are the peacemakers. Happy are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Boy, how are they happy? Happy are those who are reviled and persecuted and lied about. Happy are they? Why? Jesus continues, for they shall inherit the kingdom of heaven. For they shall be comforted, for they shall inherit the earth, for they shall be satisfied, for they shall receive mercy, for they shall see God, for they shall be called sons of God, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. For as I was persecuted, as the prophets were persecuted, as I was lied about, as the prophets were lied about, as all of these bad things have happened to me, and yet good is coming, so it shall happen to you. And that's the Christian story, that yes, your day of ending is coming soon. I Googled the average lifespan of men in America, and I am 38. Technically, so it's the average lifespan is 75.6, I believe. So I am over the hill. That's weird, right? Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? I could have gone over the hill 15 years ago. You may be over the hill, and you may have gone over the hill way earlier than you thought you did. Because we don't have the time. We don't have that clock ticking that we can see, but that clock is ticking. And all of us need to ask the question is, what is coming after this death? That death, that end is on its way. We don't know when, but one day it's coming. And we got to be ready for it. And the story that Jesus tells us is that we can be ready for it. Right now, the kids and I, we are going through the Chronicles of Narnia. And so C.S. Lewis, he wrote Chronicles of Narnia. We just finished The Magician's Nephew. We're in the midst of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And one of the things that is very clear in these books is that there's some scary stuff going on. There are lions, and the lion's a good one. But there's monsters. There's witches. There's people who just do such terrible, terrible things. And as you read the story, as I see my kids interacting with the story, I'm like, oh man, this is kind of scary. I wonder if this is going to be too scary for them. We're going to continue reading it. I think C.S. Lewis, he wrote it knowing that there's some scary things in it. But he also wrote it knowing that the ending is good, that there's a happy ending in it. And people, they kind of criticized him for having such scary things and that it's going to scare kids, and they should just kind of read nice little stories about like kids in school and stuff like that. And he said this in an article on 3 types of writing for children. He said, those who say that children must not be frightened may mean 2 things. The first is that they may mean that we must not do anything likely to give the child those haunting, disabling, pathological fears against which ordinary courage is helpless. These phobias. His mind must, if possible, be kept clear of things he can't bear to think of. Or they could mean, second, that we must try to keep out of that kid's mind the knowledge that he is born into a world of death, violence, wounds, adventure, heroism, and cowardice, good and evil. And if they mean the first, okay, I agree with them. But I don't agree with them in the second. It says, we shouldn't give them pathological fears about things, okay? Let's not do that. But if we mean to say that we need to not expose our children to anything sad, anything that might remind them that this world is so filled with suffering, he says, I disagree. The second would indeed be to give children a false impression and to feed them on escapism in the bad sense. There is something ludicrous in the idea of so educating a generation which is born in the Agpu, I don't know if that's pronounced right, but like the Soviet, like secret police thing, and the atomic bomb, since it is so likely that they will meet cruel enemies. Let them at least have heard of brave knights and heroic courage. Otherwise, you are making their destiny not brighter, but darker. Nor do most of us find that violence and bloodshed in a story produce any haunting dread in the minds of children anyways. So far as that goes, I side impenitently with the human race against the modern reformer. So, let there be wicked kings and beheadings, battles and dungeons, giants and dragons, and let villains be soundly killed at the end of the book. And essentially that's the Christian message. There is a terrible enemy that we face, and we face cruel servants of that enemy. But we have a knight in shining armor who has come to deliver us from death. We have someone who has come, who will carry us through our own end in this life under the sun. We have someone who has said that he will comfort those who mourn. And so it's safe for you to go to the house of mourning. someone who will give eternal life to those who die, and so it is safe for you as a Christian to die. And so the Christian looks at death not as an end in totality, but rather as just an end under the sun. And I hope you receive that comfort today. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that you have given us a comfort that can carry us through our own ends on this life lived under the sun. Thank you that you are our Savior, our hope that will carry us in all things. So please comfort our whole souls. Cause the doubts in our hearts to fall away and produce faith in you. In your name we pray. Amen.